again, good morning and good afternoon to everyone, depending on where you are joining us from. It is my great pleasure to welcome you to this BTR Regional Dialogue Series webinar, that this time focusing on methodologies and tools for assessing loss and damage and reporting loss and damage in biennial transparency reports. So this event gathers participants from Eurasia, Middle East, and North Africa, and Anglophone Africa, and including, of course, national BTR coordinators, technical experts, and our transparency partners from UNEP, Copenhagen Climate Center, FAO, and UNDP. My name is Slađana Bundalo, and I am the CBIT GSP Eurasia Regional Coordinator, and I will be, together with my colleague Keltum, she is coordinating MENA Transparency Network, so we will be moderating today's session. So why this topic, why this webinar now? It comes actually at a very important moment when, from across Eurasia, Anglophone Africa, and MENA region, approximately half of the countries have already submitted their first BTRs, and also several countries are already in process of preparation their second BTR. As we know from early experiences from BTR1 submissions, most of the countries included adaptation information, and loss and damage reporting remains at an early and evolving stage. Many parties refer to the climate-related impacts in a qualitative way, and only small number of countries were able to clearly distinguish residual impacts related to loss and damage, or to provide quantified information such as observed disaster loss and recovery cost, for example. Also, there is a limited use of disaster loss databases and assessment tools, which points to ongoing challenges related to data availability, also technical capacities and institutional coordination, particularly relevant for many countries represented here today from these three transparency networks. At the same time, MPGs under the ETF allow flexibility and provide also space for the first time, space for structured information on averting, minimizing and addressing loss and damage within the adaptation section of BTR. As some countries finalizing their first BTRs and other already moved to the second BTRs, this creates a real opportunity moment to strengthen both, to strengthen national assessment practices and the quality and usefulness of reported information in BTRs. So against this background, today's session has three simple objectives: to share practical methodologies and tools for assessing loss and damage, and to show how these approaches can support more clear and strong BTR reporting, and to promote peer learning through concrete country experiences. So let me briefly walk you through today's agenda. We will start with an overview of loss and damage reporting in first BTRs presented by UNEP CCC, drawing on analysis of early submissions. This will be followed by a presentation of FAO's approach to assessing loss and damage with a sectoral perspective. Then we will move to the national examples with our colleagues from Armenia and Egypt that will share practical experiences in assessing and reporting losses and damages, which will be followed by question and answer session. So this part will conclude with a panel discussion on country status, support needs, and short wrap-ups. So just to remind you that today's session is designed to be interactive. So we will be posting a link to a short questionnaire in the chat box, and you are very much welcome to respond at any time during the event. So your inputs, of course, the answers are not your answers will be kept with us, and inputs will help us better understand country challenges, reporting status, and your future plans in that regard. So we also encourage you to submit questions for the speakers throughout the webinar. You can use chat box, etc. So before we move to the first presentation, we can, or as per our usual practice, we will take a quick group photo. So if you are able, I kindly invite you to turn on your cameras for a moment so we can capture this regional exchange together. Thank you. So I will stop sharing now. So please turn on your cameras. I see nice smiley faces. Okay, I will take this first one. Okay, then one more. Hold on, please. It takes some time. And okay, third page. Thank you. Thank you very much. So let's proceed with our agenda. So I kindly invite my colleague from UNEP CCC to provide introduction and overview of loss and damage reporting in BTR1. Our first speaker is Fatima. Fatima, please, the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. You able to see the presentation, Sanjay?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so then I start. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. My pleasure to be here, and thank you to the CBGSP team for putting together such an important event and very timely, as we heard before at the start of the call. Since we are approaching to the SP event and then after the COP event, so this knowing more about how country acted through their first submission of the BTR and then what would be the ideal way to go forward is quite timely. So today I will present, as you can see, about an overview of how loss and damage has appeared in the first BTR under the Paris Agreement Transparency Framework. So then I focus on where loss and damage sits in the BTR architecture and what country actually reported and what was the gap and what we can learn from for the BTR2. So before going to providing an overview of the submissions, I wanted to provide you with a couple of words about the content, what is loss and damage. So loss and damage is not something we are just planning for it in the future anymore. As you all know, it started from the beginning of the UNFCCC's negotiation, 92, by Vanuatu putting the case about the slow onset event sea level rise forward, that the country are dealing with that and it needs to have a separate pillar in addition to the mitigation mitigation and adaptation to be called the loss and damage. And it took so many years to finally now what we can see an Article 8 of Paris Agreement in loss and damage and also operationalizing the fund for loss and damage. And then countries, they have started to report on loss and damage. So it's already a real day-to-day challenge for countries. Many countries are dealing with severe climate impact right now, and that makes reporting and planning for loss and damage more important than ever. So therefore, a stronger reporting. Can you hear? Okay.
Yes.
So stronger reporting really helps government in few practical ways. It helps them identify impact that go beyond what adaptation can address, organize solid evidence for national planning, and clearly communicate what kind of support they need internationally. And this has become even more relevant recently with development of the COP30, the review of Warsaw International Mechanism, and the launch of the first funding window, the FRLD. And all of this increased the value of having credible, well-documented loss and damage data. So now when it comes to BTR reporting on loss and damage, it is quite new, we know that, and importantly, it is voluntary. Unlike the adaptation reporting, which uses the word should, loss and damage reporting use may. So the obvious question is that if this is a purely optional, why including it? So there are two main reasons that why we should include, and I'm sure that all of you know that, and that's the reason you're joining such a webinar, is helping strengthen the global stocktake by giving a clear picture of how well we are addressing climate impact, especially the real losses and damages that countries are experiencing. And second is creating an opportunity that allows countries to make their effort visible and share experiences, highlight best practices, and learn from one another. And maybe most importantly, it helps communicate critical information to the people who need it most, and whether it has vulnerable communities or international partners. So even though it's voluntary, reporting on loss and damage isn't just like a box to tick, it's a powerful tool for collaboration, accountability, and building the resilience. So what do we mean by loss and damage? Loss and damage refers to the impact of climate change that we can't avoid or can no longer manage through mitigation and adaptation. So if you look at the left side of the slide, the second figure, it shows a kind of a progression. So we start with mitigation. So in the Article 8 of Paris Agreement, you hear about averting, minimizing, and addressing. Averting refers to the mitigation actions. So we start with mitigation, which is about reducing emission to limit future climate risk. Then comes to adaptation, which means minimizing of the loss and damage, where we try to adjust to climate impact and reduce the harm. But even with a strong mitigation and adaptation, there are always some leftovers. There are always some residual risk. That this residual risk, if that increase the vulnerability, if they don't get addressed, so they become loss and damage. So when climate hits like a storm, floods, drought, or sea level rise, the slow onset event, those residual risks can turn into the loss and damage, and we need to address them. So loss and damage happens when impact or not or cannot be avoided. So therefore, this can be because we have not done enough in doing the adapting to the climate change due to the different limit to the adaptation. We have two types of limitation. We have soft limit to limitation and hard limit to adaptation. Soft limit refers to like technology, knowledge, and institutional capacity, which we can address them and then increase the effort of adaptation, so then we can minimize more of this residual risk. But then sometimes we actually hurt the adaptation limit. For example, physical or environmental thresholds, they're met, and we cannot do more on adaptation. So that's the time that we are talking about addressing the loss and damage. So overall, loss and damage help us to understand these gaps and the more importantly, the space between what we can manage through mitigation and adaptation and what we ultimately cannot avoid. And also, it's extremely important when we are reporting on loss and damage to distinguish between adaptation and loss and damage. Even though loss and damage still is under the adaptation and we reported in the under the adaptation chapter, but it's quite important to understand what we are talking about. We are talking about those residual risks that turn into the loss and damage, as you can see it in the figure. So we have two types of loss and damage. When you want to report on loss and damage, or countries report on loss and damage, either you're looking into it from the economic perspective. So we have economic loss and damage that you can put monetary price on it, and it has like a market price indicator tied to it, like the category or like income or a physical asset. Or we have the non-economic loss and damage. Non-economic loss and damage, they are referring to those impacts that it's difficult to put a monetary price on it in order to come up with the overview of the value. Although, as being an economist, you can put monetary price on everything, you can quantify everything, but the important thing is that for the non-economic loss and damage, for example, loss of biodiversity, loss of life, loss of health, loss of the human mobility, social cohesion, if you put a monetary price, you actually underestimate the value. So also, it depends on the source of the loss and damage. If it's coming from the extreme events like drought, flood, storm, and heat wave, or it comes from the slow onset event like sea level rise, loss of biodiversity, ocean acidification. So different the loss and damage type needs different reporting and methodologies tied to it that we need to define. So there is no agreed guide so far on how parties report on climate impact and risk, as well as the averting, minimizing, and addressing related activities and institutional arrangements relevant to loss and damage. So that brings us to the key limitation on the right side of the slide, because loss and damage is not a standalone chapter, as we can see it in a different BT overviewing of the submissions. So countries have treated it very differently across their BTR. So we can't blame them because it's voluntary and not a really clear guide around. So some gave it significant attention, others barely mentioned loss and damage in their BTR. And that inconsistency is one of the main reasons that the first synergies of the BTRs found it difficult to compare information across the countries, and that leads directly to the practical implications. So if countries want their loss and damage reporting to be visible, useful, and comparable in the BTR2, so they need to make a deliberate choice to create a dedicated subsection even within the adaptation chapter, but at least it has its own place. And that one structured decision makes a bigger difference than most people expect. As I can, so I have been working with different countries, and that a small decision that allocating a separate subsection to loss and damage makes the life so much easier rather than mainstreaming the loss and damage under each sector of the adaptation, and then it makes it a little bit difficult to relate all the assessment together and come up with a comprehensive analysis at the end. So looking looking into the available analysis, I'm talking about the existing analysis by the Secretariat, NAP Global Network assessment of the adaptation on the first BTR, and also the assessment that we have done it in-house. So we can see that from this submission, the overall reporting picture is stronger than actually we expected. So we can see that so far, or by the last submission date that we looked into in 25 October, 114 parties has submitted their BTR, and 102 of those reported included climate impact and adaptation. And however, once we narrow down to the loss and damage, we see that half of them presented reference to the loss and damage in their first submission, but not all of them, they talked and provided substantive information, like 61 of the 70 provided information on loss and damage. What is especially important is how countries presented loss and damage. So the depth and structure was different significantly. Some parties provided very detailed loss and damage section, while some countries provided only very brief mention, or maybe barely half a page or a page on loss and damage. So in fact, over 40% of those mentioned about loss and damage in their BTR included loss and damage information in one or half a page to 1 page, I would say. And also the style was different. So the reporting had a different style of presenting. Some country created a visible subsection, as I mentioned, and but many embedded it within the broader adaptation chapter, or even referred it to their NAP. And as for more information on loss and damage, looking to the NAP and the related document instead of providing dedicated BTR content. So this means that loss and damage is entering the transparency system, but it is not yet being reported in a consistent and comparable way. And we actually need that comparable to be able to compare and being consistent in reporting if we want a meaningful result of it in the global stock take, as well as also for following up on the FRLD fund. So the main takeaway is that presentation on the loss and damage was highly variable in the placement, depth, and level of the quantification and clarity of the framing. So by this table, the key takeaway is that countries were much better at describing the climate hazards and impact when you look at the submission, talking about different storm or different type of the extreme event. But they are not good in showing that, okay, so you talk about the event, but you don't really talk about what are the impact or loss and damage, a specific loss and damage resulted from that. So many reports mentioned the extreme event, but they didn't mention what is the economic and non-economic loss and damage. They didn't even go to that detail of the information. A related issue is that also the causal link between the impact and losses is often very unclear. So without that connection, you see that the information becomes harder to use for planning, prioritization, and financing. And you see that there are clear gap in reporting on especially a slow onset event and defining and breaking down the non-economic loss and damage. Sometimes they talk about non-economic loss and damage in a very general way, or they actually talk about it when they talk about a health sector. They mention about the mental health or some non-economic loss, but they haven't been very consistent and following the the categorization of the non-economic loss and damage that provided by the UNFCCC's guides on the loss and damage. Also defining the activities related to the loss and damage that we call it averting, minimizing, and addressing activity. So the synthesis found that that while more than 350 activities, or like a considerable number of activities being named within this submission, only the limited number of them explain how these activities fit with it, either they are averting, they are minimizing, or addressing. And also looking into that and analyzing it, we see that most activities actually focusing on prevention, which much less attention is on the recovery. And that's also a very important point, that when we talk about loss and damage from the perspective of addressing loss and damage, the activity should very much focus on the recovery, meaning that how to address after the country has been hit by the disaster. We pass the prevention, and most of this prevention, they actually can be fit under the adaptation, or like you call them still as adaptation. So countries did somewhat better job looking into the institutional arrangement, but reporting on cost, finance needs, and support gap still remained limited, which reduces the practical value of the information. And finally, reporting approaches varied widely, making the comparison is difficult and make the reporting uneven and loosely structured. So just to make it a little bit more intuitive, I decided to add some of the country name. Yes, hello?
Dribble.
Okay, so I think it's someone forgot to mute.
Accidentally,
So,
probably. Yeah, please continue.
Yeah, I thought I passed the time. I don't know how much time I have left, so I'm trying to keep track of time as well. So this table, it just show you that if you want more example about these weaknesses, you can read about this country example, or read the way the country presented in their BTR. And for example, I'm not going to read all of them. For example, when you see related to the inconsistent presentation, you see that, for example, Solomon Island, Bangladesh, and Philippines, they have talked about or presented loss and damage in a very different way. So Solomon Island, for example, they looked into the loss and damage very much from the perspective of the a story-driven description of the live climate impact. Or in the Bangladesh, they presented it based on the survey analysis or dashboard approach, whereas in Philippines, they looked into it from the disaster and budget focus figure, looking to their disaster reduction and the amount of budget that allocated for different disaster, and talked about the insurance, and then linked it to the loss and damage. Also, when you see that countries like Vanuatu and Bangladesh, always they've been referenced by the Secretariat as the countries that they are dealing with slow onset event and also the non-economic loss and damage. But when you read, you don't see a lot of breakdown and very detail on the non-economic loss and damage. At least these countries, they have reference about the slow onset and non-economic, but still we have long way forward to really go into the detail and have a comprehensive perspective on that. So just give you a snapshot of what countries are struggling to report on loss and damage is. One is data, as you all know. So in many countries, disaster information exists, but it is incomplete. uneven across the sectors and often much stronger for rapid or extreme event than for a slow onset event. So this means that even when countries know that serious loss and damage is occurring, but they may not have an integrated national disaster that can be used directly in a BTR. So the second issue about is a methodologies. Methodologies still countries lack the simple, standardized, and widely acceptable method for quantification of the loss and damage. Specifically when they need to distinguish between the climate impact, adaptation gaps, residual losses, and non-economic losses, and all this content, not so much methodologies available or informative methodologies that is being approved by the Secretariat available. The other thing is about the institutional fragmentation. So information relevant to loss and damage often sits in different ministries and systems, for example, disaster risk management authorities, Ministry of Environment, Agriculture, Water, Planning, and Finance. And if these systems don't connect well, compiling a coherent loss and damage sector for BTR become, as you may guess, very difficult. So the fourth issue is about the financing report on the finance. Many submissions discussed institutions and policies, but much fewer provided costed loss and damage needs, meaning that the gap on the submission that talk about finance gap and the support received, and that is actually quite an important part that countries should pay attention, because without this finance related information, it's harder for countries to use this BTR reporting as a tool for mobilizing the support. And then about the capacity constraint that many developing countries, specifically the SIDS countries and the LDC countries, are preparing the BTR with a small team and under the tight deadline. And we all know, while also covering mitigation and adaptation inventories. And also supporting the same report for the loss and damage. So under this condition, is quite important that loss and damage can easily remain a partial or a secondary in their reporting. But still, I would say the SIDS countries are doing a really great job by being pioneer in presenting on the loss and damage. And finally, the reporting architecture itself is a challenge. So loss and damage is not a standalone mandatory BTR chapter. So countries place it in a different section, reporting in different ways, and they are suffering from lack of clear guidance on that. But that's the aim of what we are doing. So what we are aiming for is to look into the existing submissions and find out the gap, and then come up with a potential solution for the future submission. And this is
I just
slide,
will interrupt you here. You already exceeded your time. So please, can you go through the following slides more quickly?
Yes. So this is basically what I wanted to say about how ideally the BTR 2 can look like, learning from the BTR 1, meaning that having a dedicated subsection, and then using more quantification, looking into the NELs, and also finding the data sources. We are not inventing a wheel. We just need to identify the existing data in the country that can be used for the loss and damage. And then you can see that VMEXCOM also playing a key role by providing some guidance and tools and outline in order to help country on that. And this is just that to show you that these are the area that BTR2 can have better progress. I'll share the slide after. So this is just some criteria for you to know in this criteria you should perform differently from BTR1. And that is about the guideline that we made in-house, GSP, that it's a small section dedicated to the loss and damage. Where do you get the data? What are the existing data sources? And what are the example of those actions that they address the loss and damage you can learn from? And then this is just for inspiration, and then maybe it's applicable to your country. Then you can use it for different sectors. And this is like data sources that you see. And then also a link to a self-assessment questionnaire when you want to start reporting. Better to have a self-assessment to see what are the gap, where are the data gap that exist, and then how you can overcome them, and then put together a better reporting system. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Fatima. Sorry for interrupting you, but I know that loss and damage is very complex issue, especially assessing information, available information, etc. So we will continue right now with the second presentation, after which we will have a question and answer session. So I ask kindly our colleagues from FAO, Sarah and Zahra, to provide information about FAO's approach for assessing loss and damage. Colleagues, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Ladna. I can't actually share my presentation, so maybe you can share it for me,
I will,
possible.
of course.
It's not allowing me to do it on Teams.
Just a second. Okay, can you see the slides?
Yes, thanks.
Okay.
Okay, so good morning, colleagues, or good afternoon, depending on where you are. My name is Zahra Zaidi, and I'm a climate change adaptation expert in FAO's Office of Climate Change, Biodiversity and Environment. In today's presentation, I will focus on how parties can strengthen loss and damage reporting by drawing on some of FAO's methodologies and processes that we've developed in-house for the agriculture sector. But before I begin, I'd like to make a brief note on terminology. Throughout this session, I'm going to refer to FAO's damage and loss methodology, or the DNL methodology, which is the name of FAO's sectoral assessment tool for direct economic impacts in agriculture. So this is not the same as loss and damage, or LND, which is a much broader concept addressed under Article 8 of the Paris Agreement and under Section G of the MPGs. So you can consider FAO's damage and loss methodology as one important tool that's feeding into the overall wider loss and damage agenda. Next slide. Thanks. So in today's session, I will be talking about three main issues. First, I will quickly address what the first round of BTR submissions has revealed about current practices in loss and damage reporting. Second, I will provide an overview of FAO's methodological tools for assessing loss and damage, namely the FAO damage and loss methodology, and three institutional processes through which FAO operationalizes its loss and damage assessment. And I'll also reflect on the limits of what this methodology can and cannot presently measure. And then lastly, I'll close with suggestions of practical resources, tools, and examples of best practices that countries can draw upon for expanded data collection to support the drafting of future loss and damage reporting, especially for agri-food systems. Next slide. So let me begin first with the findings of a forthcoming FAO working paper, which offers a systematic review of how parties have interpreted and operationalized the adaptation-related provisions of the MPGs. This review covers 69 developing country BTRs, including 9 least developed countries and 9 small island developing states. The overall conclusion of the paper is that loss and damage reporting remains an incipient technical discipline. Engagement with the topic has grown substantially, which is to be welcomed, but the analytical depth of what is being reported lags behind. I've listed 6 main conclusions here, but most of these have already been covered in the previous session by Fatima. So the finding that I would like to highlight, and the one that is perhaps the most important for FAO, is that the agri-food sector is consistently identified as highly vulnerable in BTR risk assessments. Yet it is markedly underrepresented within Section G itself. Only around 1/4 of countries that reported economic loss and damage in a structured way presented the agriculture sector explicitly. And for non-economic dimensions, agricultural sectoral faming is even more rare. This is a significant missed opportunity, given the centrality of agri-food systems for food security and rural livelihoods in these regions. Next slide. So before we turn to how we can assess loss and damages in an improved way, I think it's important to recall why the loss and damage agenda matters in agri-food systems. The figures shown on this slide show the analysis of FAO's 2025 flagship report on the impacts of disasters on agriculture and food security, as well as data from 96 post-disaster needs assessments. So we can see that on average, 23% of all global disaster losses are experienced in the agriculture sector annually. For drought events specifically, this figure rises to approximately 80%, reflecting the sector's sensitivity to climate stress. Cumulatively, from 1991 to 2023, crop and livestock losses caused by disasters are estimated to be around $3.26 trillion. This is equivalent to roughly 5% of annual global agricultural GDP. And approximately 89% of this loss is due to climate-related hazards. I would, however, like to make an important caveat here. These figures provide estimates of total losses that are produced when hazards combine with exposure, vulnerability, and a range of non-climate drivers, which can include land use change, conflict dynamics, market conditions, and ecosystem degradation. We're as yet not able to determine the exact percentage or proportion of these losses that is caused by climate change, since adequate attribution studies and methodologies have not yet been developed to allow us to disentangle the effects of climate change from other processes resulting in losses. So these total impact estimations listed on this slide can give us an indicative idea of comparative impacts across sectors, geographic areas, and hazards, but they can't provide us with a true reflection of climate change impacts alone. Next slide. So in order to estimate loss and damage in agri-food systems, it's important to first understand the multidimensional nature of impacts, which varies across different hazards, impact types, processes, and timescales. And I know that Fatma has already referred to some of these in her presentation, so I will just quickly just review it from an agri-food systems perspective. So the extreme weather events that affect agriculture include tropical cyclones, floods, droughts, heat waves, and frost events. And the slow onset processes affecting agriculture are gradual, cumulative, and long-term trends such as shifting crop seasons, sea level rise, desertification, glacial retreat, and salinization. Because the impacts of extreme weather events in agriculture are more immediate, visible, and have a perceivable start and end date, they're relatively easier to identify and measure. This is why most established methodologies, including the FAO damage and loss methodology, which I will be presenting in the coming slide, address this first category of hazard impacts better. The effects of slow onset events and processes are more difficult to observe in the short term in agricultural production and are therefore more difficult to attribute to the slow onset event alone. An example of this can be the progressive decline of wheat yields due to rising temperatures and rainfall variability, which can't always be directly linked to a specific dated event. It requires long-term trend analysis and different analytical architectures than the ones that we have in existing methodologies. And as Fatma mentioned, another dimension of loss and damage that is important to keep in mind is, of course, that not all losses can be expressed in monetary or physical quantitative terms. Economic losses and damages in agriculture, such as loss of crops or livestock, refer to market-traded goods and commodities and are therefore broadly quantifiable. The same applies for destroyed physical assets, lost agricultural production, and disrupted value chains. But the degradation of ecosystem services, loss of cultural heritage, erosion of food security and livelihoods, and the loss of traditional knowledge are concepts that are difficult to value in monetary terms and are therefore classified as non-economic losses and damages. And it's very difficult to express the quantity and value of their loss, as they're either not traded on markets or only partially monetizable, and are also often irreversible and cannot be replaced. So here again, I think it's a reflection of how some categories of loss and damage are easier to measure than others. And the color coding on each box of this slide from red to green reflects the difficulty in assessing losses in each dimension, and also the availability of tools and methodologies to assess these impacts from an agri-food systems perspective. Next slide, please. Okay, so since 2015, FAO has made available a methodology for assessing the direct economic impact of extreme events affecting agriculture. The methodology was developed by FAO in close collaboration with UNDRR to provide countries with data reporting frameworks for monitoring and estimating information to use for reporting on the C2 indicator of the Sendai framework, which addresses direct agricultural losses. And this indicator actually also corresponds to the SDG indicator 1.5.2. So the methodology provides a tool for countries to categorize and report impacts in the agricultural sector in a systematic manner, which can be aggregated for comparison and analysis across sectors and scales. The methodology is built around two economic aspects of disaster impacts. The first is damage, which refers to the total or partial destruction of physical assets and infrastructure in disaster-affected areas. In the agricultural sector, this encompasses stored crops, farm machinery, irrigation and storage infrastructure, livestock shelters, fishing vessels and gear, animal pens, aquaculture ponds, forestry equipment, as well as the loss of livestock and perennial crops themselves. The economic cost of damage is calculated through a straightforward formula, which is the sum of replacement costs for destroyed assets plus repair costs for damaged assets valued at pre-disaster levels. Loss, by contrast, here refers to changes in economic flows that arise from disasters over time. These include the decline in agricultural production, reduction in farm revenues, higher operational costs due to the need to adapt practices in the aftermath of an event, and emergency expenditures incurred by producers after disasters. The methodology systematically covers 4 agricultural subsectors, which together represent the bulk of agri-foods production: crops, both annual and perennial, livestock, fisheries and aquaculture, and production forestry. The sectoral breadth is an important feature for FAO, as many existing disaster loss frameworks treat agriculture as a single aggregated category and thereby mask important subsectoral variation. The data generated through the methodology can serve multiple reporting obligations simultaneously, as it covers direct economic losses in agriculture and is especially relevant for reporting on loss and damage. Next slide. So in addition to the FAO damage and loss methodology, which I just described, FAO's efforts to assess direct economic impacts in agriculture span across additional but related processes. So the FAO damage and loss methodology feeds into the Sendai framework for reporting on agricultural losses. And so far, 89 countries have reported under this indicator at least once. And FAO has also actively supported a number of countries in establishing national damage and loss reporting systems tailored to their institutional contexts for the agriculture sector. The second process that FAO is engaged in is through the use of post-disaster needs assessments, or PDNAs. These are pre-structured multi-sector surveys that are deployed after a major disaster event, usually by national authorities in cooperation with UN and other international agencies. So PDNAs produce information on damage and loss values by sector, together with recovery and reconstruction needs. To date, over 96 PDNAs have been conducted in 63 countries between 2007 and 2024. And PDNAs are a useful source of information because they deliver granular, context-specific information. But it's important to remember that they're also very resource-intensive and, by design, not comprehensive over time, as they're only used after specific disaster events. The third process is our global impact modeling, which is undertaken for FAO's flagship report on the impact of disasters on agriculture and food security, also known as the DIFA report. So the DIFA report compares actual agricultural production that has been reported by countries in FAOStat against a counterfactual no disaster scenario that estimates the production that would have occurred in the absence of disaster-related events. So this modeling exercise currently covers losses in 192 countries for over 200 agricultural commodities during a 30-year period. But it's important to note that its coverage is restricted to crops and livestock production, just because our data on forestry and production, forestry and fisheries production is.
Please unmute your microphone. We can hear you.
So yeah, this methodology is restricted to crops and livestock production because we just don't have enough information on production in the fisheries and forestry subsectors. And again, it's the losses that it estimates don't account for attributing the effects of climate change, but cover the impacts of disasters in general. And again, in terms of limitations, it's important to remember that all of these tools and processes that I've described only cover direct economic losses in agricultural production. And so slow onset processes, non-economic losses, losses that go beyond agricultural production across the entire agri-food chain, and also cumulative and indirect impacts are not covered by these methodologies. Next slide. No, sorry, this was taken out. We can go to the one after this. Thanks. So FAO is working currently to address some of the limitations and gaps in loss and damage assessment in agri-food systems through three strategic work streams. each of which can be directly relevant to the preparation of the next round of BTRs. The first is a forthcoming publication scheduled for this year, which is provisionally titled Beyond Silos, a Comprehensive Approach to Loss and Damage in Agri-Food Systems. This volume will define the conceptual and operational boundaries of loss and damage within agri-food systems and present a comprehensive taxonomy of economic and non-economic losses across agricultural subsectors and along the entire agri-food value chain. It will also establish a methodological framework for the assessment, monitoring, and reporting of loss and damage, with particular attention to slow onset events and non-economic dimensions, the two categories which are currently weakest in terms of available tools, especially in the agriculture sector. And it will also articulate linkages with the Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction. Finally, this publication will propose pathways towards a comprehensive risk management approach, which FAO considers the most appropriate policy framework for addressing loss and damage in the sector. The report, as I said, is scheduled for launch later this year, and we would be happy to share the link to that once it's released. The second work stream is FAO's contribution to the Warsaw International Mechanism. So over the 2026 to 2027 biennium, FAO will lead the development of assessment methodologies for loss and damage in agri-food systems as part of its plan of action for the Comprehensive Risk Management Expert Group of the WIM Executive Committee. This is a formal UNFCCC anchored process, and it will produce internationally agreed guidance of direct relevance to future BTR submissions. And lastly, as a member of the Santiago Network's roster of organizations, bodies, networks, and experts, FAO will support governments in drafting technical assistance requests relating to loss and damage. This includes requests for assessments, for strengthening national databases, for designing integrated policies, and for developing funding proposals to the Fund for Responding to Loss and Damage. Next slide. So there is one tool that I particularly wanted to mention in this presentation that could be useful for monitoring and reporting loss and damage. And it's a new initiative that has recently been launched by the United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction. It's called Delta Resilience, which stands for Disaster and Hazardous Events, Losses and Damages Tracking and Analysis. And it's an open source toolkit which has been developed by UNDRR in close collaboration with UNDP, WMO, and FAO, among other partners. So the Delta Resilience tool builds on the foundation of the Disinventar Sendai monitor system, and this new system significantly expands on previous data collection methodologies to host new data sources and typologies. It's a more comprehensive and more granular tool. It is standards-based with established metadata and standardized guidelines. It captures hazardous events and disaggregated losses and damages at local and subnational scales. It supports open application programming interfaces or APIs for interoperability with national statistical and geospatial systems. And it enables rapid visualization through dashboards that can analyze impacts by sector, by hazard type, and by disaster event. And most importantly, its expanded focus takes into account slow onset events and processes, cascading and compounding impacts, institutional capacity and availability of early warning systems or risk insurance mechanisms. And it also covers socioeconomic outcomes such as displacement. So I think it would be an interesting tool for countries to adopt and to familiarize with themselves with. So For agri-food systems specifically, FAO has contributed methods and data standards that allow this delta resilience tool to track losses and damages in the agriculture sector by linking observed crop, livestock, and fishery impacts directly to hazardous event records. This means that the data entering Delta can seamlessly align with the FAO damage and loss methodology, as well as the Sendai indicator C2. But also it includes expanded hazard and data categories, new data typologies such as geospatial information, and also climate data. Next slide. So here, just for reference, I've shared some existing tools and databases that can also potentially be used for obtaining information for loss and damage reporting. I think the underlying message here is that some of the data required for stronger Section G reporting can already be found in internationally maintained databases or sector-specific repositories. Part of the work that lies ahead in identifying existing sources of data and then structuring and connecting this information to feed into more comprehensive loss and damage assessments. And just as a quick reference, I mean, from a loss and damage perspective, especially in agri-food systems perspective, there are some existing BTR reports that act as good practice examples from the first round of BTR reporting. And here, of particular mention is Costa Rica, and then also Vanuatu. The shared lesson from both examples is that although not perfect, strong loss and damage reporting can be used not only for transparency on climate goals, but also for engaging with policy and mobilizing finance. Next slide. Sorry, next slide. So, yeah. And so with that, I'd like to thank you for your attention, and I look forward to any questions or comments.
Thank you. Thank you very much, colleagues. This was full of information about the loss and damage. So I believe the countries captured what is the most important for them. So what we have learned, the assessment and loss and damage topic is not just about reporting and assessing, it's also for planning at the national level, for planning your measures or actions to better combat to the negative effects of the climate change. So what we heard here from our colleagues from UNEP Climate Center and from FAO, we learned about why presentation and the sharing information of loss and damage is important, and how to present and report information on economic and non-economic information on loss and damage. So it's very hard to estimate it, to estimate non-economic losses and damage under the monetary value. So also we had opportunity to hear about recent experiences when it comes to the reporting of the loss and damage. Even though it's not obligatory, MPGs also use prefix may when provide guidance how to report, but also for the first time, MPGs provide a first structured guidance on how to report loss and damage. When it comes to analysis of the information provided and reported on loss and damage, almost all countries reported adaptation through their BTRs for documents already submitted. but around half of them submitted substantive information of L&D, loss and damage. So it means that we have to work more and to find out ways how to assess and how to find out the information that can be shared and reported within our BTRs. Also, we had opportunity to hear interesting examples from countries reported their loss and damage. Just to say that all these slides and presentations will be shared through our climate transparency platform, and as well as recording of the event, so you will have opportunity later to recall and to use the slides as a certain type of the guidance. Also, interesting FAO provided analysis on BTR submissions, and what our colleague from the FAO stressed that FAO that agriculture sector is underrepresented when it comes to the loss and damage, even though it's highly affected by climate change, and assessment of the loss and damage in agri-food systems is especially difficult, and of course, again, assessing non-economic loss and damage is particularly challenging. Also, our colleague presented FAO's assessment methodology, which is applied through by using as a base Sendai framework, PDNAs, and global climate modeling. And importantly, there is information very interesting about Delta Resilience tool that can help countries to strengthen national disaster tracking. And this new Delta Resilience tool builds on DES Inventor that I believe most of you are already familiar with. So also there are some other tools shared during the FAO's presentation about loss and damage data sources for data for countries that need, and most of the countries need data for assessing, of course, and reporting their loss and damage. So now, after these two very extensive presentations from our colleagues, I invite all participants to ask questions, to raise their hands, or also you can put your question in the chat box. You are very much welcome, since we are here for you and really want to help you in order to improve and enhance your reports, and especially assessing and tracking your loss and damage, and of course to report in your first or second BTR. I don't see any hands raised, but also we shared some link before this event and during this event, asking some questions, and we got some interesting information. So in meantime, while you are thinking about questions for our experts, I will share briefly the results of this short questionnaire. I believe you, oh yeah, we have 9 questions so far. I believe you can see my screen now. So out of these 9 responses, we have responses from Morocco, Seychelles, Lesotho, Libya, Kenya, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Nigeria, Sierra Leone, and Sudan. So when asked, is there an institution or entity that coordinates planning, implementation, and reporting loss and damage assessments and efforts in your country? So let's see, 4 countries, 4 of you responded partially. 1 says no, and 4 countries says yes, there is institution or entity coordinates loss and damage. So let's see next question. If you have or partially have institution that coordinates loss and damage area, some of you mentioned institutions from your countries. So there are Ministry of Interior, Disaster Risk Management Department, Ministry of Environment and Forestry, Climate Change Directorate, Civil Protection, National Emergency Management Agency, and Environment Protection Agency, in this case from Sierra Leone. Next question was, how would you rate availability of loss and damage data in your country? We all know that data is critical for the most of the countries. So availability, moderate is for 3 countries, low for 4 countries, 1 very low, and 1 don't know. So from moderate to low, we have these answers. So data types available in your country to inform loss and damage assessments. Again, we deal with the adaptation with the data. So most of you use data from climate models and socioeconomic data, while also you use historical data, environmental data, disaster loss databases, sectoral data, and qualitative community and community level of information, including losses. So I see one hand raised. Keith, I will stop now sharing these results of the questionnaire. If you have a question now for our presenters, our experts, please unmute your microphone and ask.
Thank you. My name is Keith Ahumuza. I work with the Uganda Bureau of Statistics. My question is on the loss and damage methodology for agriculture. For example, when I have, say, a garden or an agricultural plot, and I have planted, say, my maize, and the garden experiences, say, flooding before the time of, I could say, production. How would I estimate the loss for such household? Why go by the expected output or expected production, and I attach a monetary value to it? How do I deal with such a scenario? I don't know whether it's
Yeah, no, just to quickly jump in if I can on that question. So yes, you would look at the expected yield based on experience in previous years, and also use the price point for maize in this case for previous years or the year before your loss, and estimate the total loss based on those numbers. I hope that explains or answers your question. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, yes. Maybe just a follow-up. So when I'm looking at the expected yield, am I looking at national expected yield? Then I attribute it to the farmer that has lost their production, or I track the same farm and I basically do a track of the previous season, how much was produced per unit area.
It depends on what information you have available. So obviously, the more disaggregated information that you have on expected yields, the better. But in some cases, we have to use national averages for expected yield, although it's not ideal. But if there is farm level data available, then of course that can be utilized to calculate the overall losses in production. Over.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Keith, for the question. I now will continue with the answers you already provided through this short questionnaire. So, does your country have any national guidelines, methodologies, or tools for assessing loss and damage? Do you see my screen now? Yes, you should. So, most of you responded that you don't have national guidelines, methodologies, or tools for assessing loss and damage. Two said yes, it would be nice to hear from you what type of the methodologies, how did you develop, and three of you don't know. If yes, please briefly mention which guidelines or tools, for example, national damage and losses methodology, FAO disaster and loss, CAT guidance, national DRR methodology, which methodology you use at national level. So here are 9 responses. Morocco has national tools and methodologies for assessing loss and damage, including disaster loss databases such as DASL Inventor, as well as broader integrated disaster risk management framework. It has also used Morocco natural hazards probabilistic risk assessment and related national risk assessment and flood risk management tool. Nice to hear from Morocco. Also, the second country has disaster risk and management methodology. Other use FAO, FAOs. Some of you don't know. Also, some countries also have national damage and loss methodology. Is there an M&E system in place for your loss and damage, for instance, loss and damage policies, plans, or measures? So out of 9 responses, most of you do not have M&E system in place for loss and damage. For some, 3 of you have partially implemented, and 2 countries are in planning stage. And here are some questions and specific topics on loss and damage that you would like to address during this event. So again, Morocco has a system related to monitoring and adaptation and disaster risk reduction, but a dedicated, fully operational M&E system specifically for loss and damage that does not appear to be fully established. Morocco's NDC notes a system for to monitor and assess vulnerability and adaptation, and recent disaster risk management support has also aimed to strengthen monitoring and evaluation of DRR investment. Thank you. Here are several questions. One of these is, what is the scope of the loss and damage? Maybe it's good to go one by one. Anyone from FAO or UNEP would like to answer? What is the scope of the loss and damage? It's, I would say, a broad question, broad question. It's
yes.
Not easy to, yeah.
If I,
please.
If I can provide. So when you ask about what is the scope of loss and damage, I think you are referring to what is the difference between loss and damage and adaptation, and why we should look into loss and damage. And it goes back to what I presented about the residual impact or residual risk that turns into the residual impact and then ultimately the loss and damage. So the scope of the loss and damage are the ones that those impact that cannot be avoided, and it's because of the hard limit and soft limit to adaptation, or simply because of the maladaptation. And then the scope of reporting on loss and damage is reporting on the impact, either they are the economic impact and non-economic impact, as well as to predict what are the costed loss and damage activities, meaning that the finance and the support needed, and also the institutional arrangement or M&E of the loss and damage. So these are the three reporting scope that usually for the BTR scenario we need to look into. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your answer. I will continue with the questions we received. One of the questions is like, for reporting loss and damage, can countries use media reports, when other information is not available? What do you think? What do you suggest here?
Okay.
Leia, okay. Would you like to answer to this question? And then we have a question from Leia.
Oh, I thought, Leah, do you want to answer, or is another question?
Yes,
Hi.
please answer.
Yeah, no, I was just jumping in because, hi everyone, and thank you for the session. So I was just jumping in
Hello,
because
Leia.
it's something that we did. Hi, Zlatan, how are you? And hi, Fatma, it's good to see you again. It's something we did for right now in Lebanon, we're working on a national framework to attribute economic and non-economic loss and damage. So to be able to do a hazard mapping, including climate projections, to kind of look at, like, in the past up to the current present, where were the areas that were historically vulnerable, let's say specifically wildfires, floods, and storms. And we did look at the news. I mean, sometimes you don't have the data, you look at the news for specific events, just so you can do like the historical kind of assessment. And then when you plug in the climate projections and all of that, it kind of becomes like a source either to get the information or to validate. So to an extent, we kind of do use it because there's not that much data available. But since I have the mic, I have a question for Fatima, if it's possible.
Of course.
So based on your presentation, and sorry to take this back to a different kind of discussion, but you said that if in the BTR, if we're not, because we're now working in Lebanon on BTR 2, 5, and C, but we might not do the 5 and C part. We might just do BTR 2. So we are opting out of doing the adaptation section. We're keeping that for the national communication. Even though we're doing a lot of work on loss and damage right now, we don't have to put it in the BTR. We can wait for next year and add it in the adaptation for the answer. I just wanted to validate that with you, if I understood correctly.
Okay, I'll leave this to Secretary to respond, because from my point of view, we have some countries that it's very much up to the country how they want to go forward. Right now, there is no really mandate about it. I haven't heard also from the VMEXCOM. I haven't heard anything related to that, but I leave it to the UNFCCC colleague.
Okay, thank you, Leah. We will clarify this question with the colleagues from UNFCCC and we'll come back to you. So also, Fatima, do you think that countries can use media reports? We have here example from Lebanon, how they use actually, but for somebody that really starts from nothing, from country probably does not have any available information. What do you say?
Yeah, I think I would like to again follow what Leah said. They can be used as a supplementary source. I wouldn't recommend it as like a primary base for official loss and damage data, but definitely as a supplementary, it's okay. And like they can help a country to identify the events, provide qualitative context, and also the to fill these narrative gaps. But because they are not standardized or really verified, as Leah mentioned, they need some kind of means of a verification and cross-checked against this official loss and damage assessment. But I actually wanted to say, in the country, if you look into existing reporting system when it comes to BDNA, Sendai framework, and under different sectors like data collection, there are some like data or pipeline available that, okay, maybe you don't know if actually it's relevant for the loss and damage, but actually it is. So I think the first step before going to sources like media report is to look into the existing data at the statistic department or different like relevant sector, even non-state actor that they collect data to identify and map them to see actually maybe they can be used also for the loss and damage, and then go to other supplementary sources like media.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this clarification. Maybe in interest of time, we can skip these last two comments and go on our... Yeah, yes, please,
we
Kelto.
need to start with Nahla because she has another commitment.
Okay, of course. That was my intention now to announce our second part of the event, where we will have two countries to present their experiences in assessing and reporting losses and damage. So the first one is our colleague from Egypt. We will change the schedule now since she has some obligations after. So please introduce yourself shortly and start with your presentation. The floor is yours. Welcome very, very much. Nahla?
Okay, thank you for your all. Yeah, I want to check if my presentation is already appeared, and I want to thank you for the discussion and presentations. It's really useful. I have a very quick presentation about our Biennial Transparency Report. Let me first introduce myself. This is Nahla Zakaria. I'm an adaptation specialist on behalf of Ministry of Environment in the project of Biennial Transparency Report. I will present Egypt national experience in reporting the adaptation dimensions within our first BTR. Now you can see my PowerPoint or what? Sorry, can you hear me?
Just maybe, yeah, you can put it in full screen, maybe.
Okay, I'll try. Just a minute, please. Okay. Sorry, I will present in this situation. So I will focus on how we have institutionalized our approach to climate risks, particularly in the Nile Delta. This is our case study and how our national M&E system is transforming reporting from a static exercise into a strategic tool for resilience. So my next slide, I will skip this introduction about the VTR itself, and I will go through our adaptation priorities. Okay, we have a specific sectors. This sectors is our prioritized according to our national circumstances, and also this is our legal framework. Then I will go to the climate risk. What is the approach here of our climate risk? For Egypt, the BTR is a core of our enhancing transparency framework. So, So climate here isn't equitable. Coastal communities and the small-scale farmers are on the front lines of our BTR, emphasizing the adaptation in social stability issues, focusing non-economical losses. Because I will talk about the qualitative and the quantitative risk assessment we already conducted, but let me tell you about the current progress. Egypt has made significant projects like 1 canal lining project are evidence of our commitment. So the BTR document is a completed output that are now beginning to yield resilience outcomes. But we still have struggling with data and the knowledge base because scientific integrity depends on data. We rely on the National Disaster Loss Database, LDCs, and the sectorial indicators. As we discussed with the TERT, we are refining our climate attribution capabilities to better link specific loss and anthropogenic climate change. Let me go through key challenges of our BTR. Yes. First of all, we started to make like gap analysis because we do a lot of efforts scattered in many sectors, but at the integration perspective, the level of data is definitely or it's completely different from sector to other. So we're struggling to aggregate the level of data and be in the same wavelengths in the different sectors. For example, the trend risk not static. So our modeling show that even under moderate scenarios, the pressure of Nile Delta increase. The transition from reactive adaptation to proactive risk modeling, this is the shift here we are documentation in our transparency roadmap. So looking at the chart, next slide, sorry. Yeah. As you know, this is the climate hazard as the other countries and key risks of our status, and we identify the vulnerable areas through the many tools like remote sensing and the mapping. Yes, this is our concise or our minimized data in this chart. And let me tell you how we calculate this subtype of natural hazards. First of all, we depending on the qualitative data because in the first our BTR, we don't have actually the qualitative data. So we use the published documents from the UN.
Nahla, we cannot
Nahla,
hear
your
you.
voice is not very clear.
Yeah, probably you have
And seen
issues with your
Sorry, I
internet
can't hear you.
connection. Mhm.
Sorry,
We don't hear you very
can
well,
hear me?
Nahla.
Now it's
Yes,
fine,
now.
but there are interruptions.
Okay, I can raise my voice if it would be helpful. You can
Okay,
hear me
please
now?
continue. Yeah, yes.
Yeah, we can hear you now, Nahla. Go ahead.
Okay. Now I want to talk about Nile Delta mapping geographical vulnerability. This area is critical.
We have
We
lost your
cannot
voice
hear
again,
you
Nahla.
again. Nahla, we cannot hear you.
Nile Delta, you cannot hear
We
me?
have lost. I cannot hear, Nahla.
Yeah.
Yes,
We are
I cannot
losing
hear
you
you,
from.
Nahla.
I'm so sorry for instability of the network, but I'm trying.
Thank you. Please continue.
Okay. You still see my screen or not?
Yes. Oh, now not.
Okay.
Now we don't see.
Okay. Yes, I'm so sorry for this interruption. I will reshare my screen again.
We still
So
don't see.
I will complete to speak about vulnerable sectors. Yeah.
We don't see your slides. Maybe we can continue without sharing slides. Maybe it's not, you know,
Okay,
it
I will
would be-
try the last time. Then if not, I will continue.
Yeah, just
Yes.
verbally, without
Yeah.
slides. Mhm.
Okay. Sorry.
It's
So
okay.
our
No
vulnerable
worries.
sectors, as documented in our BTR, agriculture, water, are the most sensitive sectors. However, we are now expanding our focuses to include also health, tourism, and urban cities to ensuring a holistical sectoral coverage as we move toward our next reporting cycle. In planning also for the next BTR, we include the sectors as indicated in our NDC. Here, Egypt made significant storage projects, as I mentioned before, like 1 billion coastal protection works, so it would be included. Let me tell you the key challenges. Our challenges remain primarily to attribute gaps and data. We also face the challenge of quantifying non-economic loss, NELSS. These are the technical frontiers Egypt in working to address through enhanced capacity and international cooperation. Our risk trends is so obvious. Risks aren't static, but our modeling show that even under moderate scenarios, the pressure of Nile Delta increase. This is necessary, a transition from reactive adaptation to proactive adaptation, as I mentioned before. So our sectoral implications, the evidence show that no sector is immune, from tourism in the Red Sea to agriculture in the Nile Delta. Climate impacts translate into GDP pressure. This is why our BTR focuses on sectoral vulnerability assessment to guide target investment. So the existing adaptation response, we have protected 68 kilometers of vulnerable shores using natural-based solution. This is a good point. While these responses are robust, the BTR identifies a financial gap. So our current pace of implementation must be scaled up to match the accelerating climate trends. Here, my question, what is the barrier
We have lost you, Nahla, once again.
of advance? Okay. I'm speaking about the barriers of scaling up. The barriers are clear limited access to consensual finance, the need of advanced predictive modeling and the technical capacity. In the sectoral overcoming this require a shift from project-based to systematic support. You still hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
And also our next is about monitoring and reporting. The BTR process has been learning curve, but to be honest, in the MRV system, we still build and construct the framework of the MRV. It's not effective yet. So this is the crucial point about monitoring and reporting. And by institutional, our national M&E system, we have M&E system, but MRV system is not working yet. So we have improved the data flow across ministries. This transparency allows us to identify exactly where every dollar of support can achieve the highest resilience divide. So transition to support needs with the scientific and the institutional context. I will now conclude that our priority support needs, moving from diagnostic to requirements of action. So our needs exactly are threefold: sustainable finance, technical technology transfer, and institutional capacity building. These are not just requests, they are the necessary conditions to turn our BTR findings into a level of resilience and the implementation process. My question here, why support needs matter? Because international support is catalyst of scaling. As you know, it ensures that our transparency efforts lead to tangible outcomes without predictable. But the good thing here in our next BTR or will work in the MRV system that will support in reporting process, and the transparency would be more obvious. We have as an adaptation group, we have some recommendations. First, we must strengthen the national M&E system. This involves digitalizing data collection and improving our ability to track qualitative and all indicators and also quantitative, because in the first BTR we just used qualitative, not exact quantitative. Our next recommendation, second, we recommend scaling up targeted investment in our vulnerable zones. This means moving toward large-scale resilience programs rather than isolating pilots. We have many pilots in Egypt and many successful pilots, but for scaling up, generally, we still scattered efforts. We have to aggregate all efforts in the same. The last conclusion, the BTR is far more than a compliance document. So it is a scientific roadmap for investment. Egypt has provided the evidence. Now we call for the partnerships and finance to turn this transparency into actions. So the conclusion here, in conclusion, the BTR, as I mentioned before, have to be aggregated in the level of data and also in the level of national level, not just pilots. This is a quick update on our status in Egypt regarding to the first experience in the first BTR.
Thank you very much, Nahla. Thank you very much for sharing the experience. And Egypt is one of the countries that did a very good chapter on adaptation and also loss and damage section. So thank you for sharing your experience, Nahla. It's good to have you. So now, without delay, so I would hand it over to Diana. Diana, she's the Climate Change Program Senior Advisor from UNDP. She's representing Armenia. And here are your questions. First of all, did your first BTR included information on loss and damage? And if yes, what information did you report? And what were the main challenges in reporting on loss and damage? And also, does your country assess loss and damage? And if so, how? And what methods or system are used, and what are the key gaps or support needs to improve the loss and damage assessments and reporting in your country? Thank you very much for accepting our invitation. Diana, over to you.
Thank you for invitation, and thank you for this opportunity to share Armenia's experience with the first BTR, and also with experience on trying to improve the national capacity and knowledge on loss and damage and methodological aspects of assessment. So I will go to, you can see the slide?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So the background is that Armenia has prepared for reporting in BTR because we have national adaptation plan. And here is coming that also the adaptation is very critical for Armenia as mountainous and country vulnerable to the climate change, which is also part of our NDC under Paris Agreement 2 and in Paris in NDC 3 as well. So there is also institutional framework which is helping us for coordinated efforts through all ministries who are involved in the climate related issues or affected. So another aspect of this is similar maybe to the colleague from Egypt, is that the water sector is the most vulnerable. That's why beside the national adaptation plan was prepared also specific sector specific adaptation plan with measures which has very strong monitoring framework, which is also helping us to increase the efforts for reducing vulnerability of this sector. And as colleagues from UNEP mentioned, it's very important to understand how we are making distinguishing the loss and damage from vulnerability and aspects, and how we are planning our adaptation policies for reducing also the damage from the climate change. So that's why here is very important developments that we have in a legal area. It is the climate law was adopted, which means that making very strict issues on reporting, on actions, on finance, and the most important that we very closely cooperate with the Ministry of Emergency, which is responsible for the new law on disaster risk management and population protection, which was adopted last year. And this document also has certain issues or definitions related to damage and loss and damage ones, and related to climate change. So here it's in that law is also included the climate change as direction for roles and responsibilities for having regular reporting, keeping database, and the methodological support for assessment reports prepared under that regulation. So the last thing that was also stipulated by this law, which is now in the process of agreement within government, is procedure for assessment of disaster risk, including climate change. And here is the challenge, which maybe FAO and UNEP colleagues mentioned, is that the assessment has to be very much based on proved data. And here is coming the absence of proper data collection, proper assessment techniques for economic and non-economic losses. And this is the issue that we face also while preparing adaptation plan. These are the issues that you have to apply national level data, but there is also subnational data which have to be collected properly. And as colleague from Lebanon mentioned, is sometimes you are learning about event, but this event have to be enter in the register of the country with its assessment of loss and the impact which this disaster or this hazard brought, to be later on reported as a comprehensive data under the BTR. So this the agriculture sector losses are reported when there was there is state committees are organized to assess the losses from agricultural from the hydrometeorological extremes. But here is coming also the question that was also raised: you are taking what type of data as a base for yield loss calculations, and how much this is accurate. And here is also there are challenges that this data sometimes are not comparable. So Armenia has applied to the fund of national partnership, NDC partnership, for supporting with funds for making preparing the technical guides for risk assessment, and this task was done in 2024-25, and the main objective was that to understand, to have easy tools in hand of national partners for assessing decision making, which will be based on data, on evidence, and considering that there is a growing loss and damage impact for different sectors of economy. And the outcome of this study was methodological guide, which later on I will show, and it can be accessible, and it was universal, I think, with its application. You can think and use. It was 2 sectors covered, was water and infrastructures. And here it's from infrastructures and water sector assessment and methodology came out also the importance of how Armenia can apply for support for loss and damage. And here is the scheme which is usual for adaptation understanding, but here is very important to understand how we are calculating and distinguishing loss and damage, and the technical aspects are sometimes can be important for having valid reporting. And these are the linked and the this methodological guide, and with the QR code, because when Sajjana said that will be everything will be transparently published, you can apply and easily find this methodological tool. And the principles which was used for this guide development is climate event coverage, inclusion of variability, because you can understand that the climate hazards are not happening with the same frequency and amplitude. And the cross-sectoral impact assessment, because it also was mentioned, for example, agricultural impact is impacting health, but in the same time with the food availability and security, it's have different dimensions, and different dimensions related also not geographically for the country, but also for different groups of populations. So that this is making it very also specific when you are doing assessments and analysis of economical judgment. Sorry, I'm a bit hurrying to tell because the time I understand is short, and in a water sector breakdown was used also IPCC guidelines by subsectors. It means that water sector was analyzed from the point of agricultural water use, drinking water, sanitation, hygiene, energy production, because around 30% of our energy generation is coming from hydropower. Freshwater ecosystems, which are also very critical now when the synergy between conventions is on the importance given during negotiations, and here it's coming that the loss and damage is also impacting biodiversity loss. Industrial water use, which is critical also for economic development, and so it's coming also to understanding on how the state have to plan its water resources, facing the growing this impact in the form of loss and damage as well, because not all adaptation measures can compensate the damage. Infrastructure also was breakdown by the subsectors: transportation, energy infrastructure, building, and urban structures, because here they are affecting from heat waves, from flooding, and etc. Now it's very critical also to understand the importance of communication technology, these towers, how they can be disrupted, the communication and access to internet. Also, it's important to understand that solid waste management systems, landfills, are not properly managed in our country. So the climate change can impact also that the disposal systems of solid waste can be have adverse impact on soil, on water basins, and also how these infrastructures can impact the green and blue infrastructure, reducing also the nature-based solutions opportunities. So based on this was done this database creation, and was checked available data. And as usual in developing countries, and we are not immune also from this, even being small country, not compared to Egypt. But in any case, the data availability also is issue for us, and these are one of the critical outcomes also for this study, and was placed in front of government also for understanding how the data collection can improve, because this is important for national planning, but also for accessing international support for loss and damage. And how it is reflected in the BTR, because this question was raised. Of course, the BTR one was prepared in a short period of time because Armenia was late in receiving funds for its preparation. But loss and damage with this separate chapter was included from the point of what is done in the country for loss and damage, but not as a loss and damage data, which was mentioned as a gap in a BTR reporting. Lebanon colleague also mentioned, we are planning to do more detailed analysis for adaptation and modeling and loss and damage reporting under national communication planned for next year to be submitted. It will go with the second BTR in conjunction, so all this information will be reported. And this was the plan for the country to report in details as a future. This is the structure of BTR. I think we are not original. Everybody is doing the same. So here it's the difference that between two reporting for previous national communication and what was reported now. It is certain improvements were done, and this was a requirement of MPGs, and that's why this improvement we will try to build on that in the next BTR, and which will come more detailed part in national communication. And it's important that the reference part for the climate impact and adaptation, you have to reference on studies which are available in open or prepared under the support of donor or international community. But here is very important that we are basing a lot on our National Statistics Department yearbooks and cooperating very strongly with the Ministry of Environment, with Statistical Committee for increasing the data which is related to the climate change impacts, and that's why this can be proper national reference points. And I think this is the issue that we will try to improve and increase in a future our capacity building activities. And we are glad that, for example, the World Bank and Asian Development Bank has supported Armenia with certain analysis related to transport sector vulnerability, to climate change economical impact assessment report, and these are the very good sources of information because they are giving knowledge and country-specific data to be referenced in the and used in the BTR reporting. So for future preparation also we will rely on such type of sources. So thank you for this opportunity to share experience because there was time management that I was looking on my phone, not to go beyond the time allocated for this webinar.
Thank you very much, Diana. It's great to have you. Thank you for accepting the invitation. Thank you for the valuable insights and also for sharing the this relevant information. It's very good to have all countries and networks sharing their experience, learning from each other, and this is one of the main purposes of these transparency networks, of course. Thank you, Diana. So now I would like to open the floor for your questions. If you maybe have some questions or comments for Diana. Maybe in the chats. I think it's okay. So now we will move to the Menti with some questions for countries. It's a kind of panel, but it's a more open panel discussion, we can say. And you are most than welcome to take the floor and speak whenever you want. Slajana, over to you.
Thank you very much, Keltum and Diana. Thank you for sharing your experiences with us. Also, just before I start, please, can you stop sharing your presentation just to allow me to share this last Menti that we have prepared. Just a second. Okay. So I will share some questions. Can you see the screen?
Yes, you can see.
Yes, Lajan.
Thank you. So you see instructions. You can use sorry, QR code to join, or you can just type in your browser menti.com and enter the code 66833500. So we have already 7 participants joined. I will wait just a few moments for allowing more participants to join to this very short and simple questionnaire. Okay, let's start with the first question. Which best describes your role in relation to the BTR report? So, different answers we have here, like national focal points and lead coordinators, data providers, consultants from international support providers, and others. So, okay, nice to having you here. Let's move to the next slide. So most of you are national focal points and lead coordinators for BTR. What are the main challenges your country faces in assessing and reporting loss and damage? So you can select 2. So waiting for your answers, you can choose between limited data availability, limited technical capacity, lack of clear institutional arrangements, lack of standardized methodologies, limited financial resources, and others. So 7 of 11 of you already responded, maybe some additional responses. I expected here that most of you will respond like limited data availability, but also you stressed here lack of clear institutional arrangements, of course, as for any other areas within the BTR reporting or implementing, managing your climate agenda. Clear institutional arrangement is really key precondition. So, okay, let's move to the next question. How confident do you feel about reporting loss and damage information under your BTR? So not confident, slightly confident, moderately confident, confident, and very confident. So 0 is very confident, okay. Slightly confident, 3 of you are slightly confident, and moderately confident, okay. So of course, that's why we are offering this type of the webinars, technical webinars, to help you a bit with understanding and improving maybe knowledge and information sources that can help you to establish or strengthen your national systems for assessing loss and damage, and also to report more in more details, and to be more confident with sharing information in your BTRs on loss and damage. Thank you very much. Let's move to the next question. In relation to your first BTR, how would you describe the status of information on loss and damage? So most of you are complying some information. Some of you are under discussion and planning to include and report loss and damage in your BTR. Okay, some of you still don't know. So in any case, if we can help you anyhow to make decision to choose what information you can report, how you can improve maybe your recent BTR with information for your second BTR, please feel free really to contact us, me and Keltum, and we will find way to provide you with information and to help you to improve your report. Okay, the next question: do you need support to develop or strengthen a national loss and damage assessment methodology? Most of you need. Of course, as I said, please feel free and contact us with your specific requests, and we will find a way to answer, to support you, to guide you in this context. And a quick question for the presenters. If you have some question, this is your chance. So somebody, thanks to the great presentation, thanks to you for attending. I don't see any other questions, so it's okay, of course. Next question for you: does your country currently have a formal or informal approach to loss and damage assessment? So two of you responded that you have ad hoc or project-based assessment, which is of course acceptable, but needs to be improved. And some of you did not approach yet. Maybe some other answers. Okay. Mostly you have ad hoc or project-based assessments. So, of course, as said, please let us know, let ask any simple questions through email or any other communication channel. So we are more than happy to help you answering and guiding you with this. What is the most urgent priority for improving loss and damage reporting in your country? So I here see the 5 answers. So most of you need capacity building training, clear institutional roles. Any additional answers? Not so far. Okay, I believe we are a bit over of the planned time. So how relevant was this webinar for your work? Extremely relevant and very relevant. Okay, glad to hear. And the final question: how satisfied are you with this webinar? Very satisfied. Any questions are available, answers are available here, so you can really provide honestly what you think, which is important for our improvement for next sessions. So this is, I believe, all. Yes, thank you very much for joining our webinar today. I will stop here and give a word to the Keltum. Keltum, over to you.
Thank you very much, Slajana. Thank you very much for Fatima. Of course, it's always pleasure to have you with us. And thank you for the continuous support. Thank you for Pedro and for Zakia, also for being with us and providing the supports and for the great collaboration. Thank you for all countries who attended the webinar today with us from the 3 networks, from Anglophone Africa, from Eurasia, of course, and from the Middle East and North Africa. And this webinar was just like a continuity, we can say, to the first one that we did on monitoring, evaluation, and learning systems, and also to the webinar series that Slajana led last year on adaptation reporting. And we believe so that we need also to organize another webinar, which will be more focused on the methodologies, on the approaches, of course, for loss and damage, because this request was raised by many countries in the capacity needs last year. So I don't know what to say, but thank you very much for the continued support. It's a pleasure to have all these countries, and thanks for all the speakers, for all organizations who supported us. Thank you for the big boss, which is Slajana when it comes to adaptation and loss and damage, of course. And it's a pleasure to collaborate with you and, of course, with Chela. So that's it. Slajana, over to you. And Fatima, or Zakia, if you would like to add anything else.
No, thank you very much. I would like just to say thank you all. And in case of having any specific question, please do reach out. We are here for you. Thank you.
Colleagues from FAO, any comments, or I will just conclude with this event. Thank you for joining us. That is why we are here, to help you, to support you, and for any unanswered your question or for sessions one-on-one, please, we are very glad to hear from you and to help you as always. So have a nice day and see you on the next session. Goodbye to everyone.
Bye. Have a good day.